Tonight, Bank of Ghana in urgent search for recapitalization support from government following historic 60.8 billion cedi loss that has left it significantly weakened.
We will have to recover as we move along, but we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term.
Meanwhile, the minority in Parliament is serving notice the recent BOG expenditure will be subject to value for money audit under future NDC government.
And I want to tell Dr. Addison that in future we will subject these numbers to value for money audits. We will understand how it is that it is reasonable to spend 33 million on communication. How reasonable it is for you to spend 97 million on travel.
We are live in Parliament where the minority is insisting the purported write-off of part of the debt owed the central bank by government is void.
The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
And Top Story is always brought to you by Vodafone. The minority in Parliament is serving notice tonight that it will subject some recent expenditure made by the central bank, the Bank of Ghana, to a value for money audit. It comes on the day we're getting clarity from the central bank that it's going in search urgently of recapitalization support from government after recording a historic 60.8 billion cedi loss that has left it significantly weakened. There is intense pressure now being brought to bear on the central bank to account for what happened. The central bank has been explaining that the loss that it recorded is largely down to the domestic debt exchange program. We'll hear from them pretty shortly, extensively. But I want to take you to Parliament today, where the minority has been addressing the press on the subject. Listen to Isaac Adongo, who is the ranking on the Finance Committee.
The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions next year when the auditors get back there, because there is no parliamentary approval. We have not written off any 32 million. Of course, impairment, we don't have a problem with impairment, because that is a standard accounting practice. But write-off, they must come under Section 53 of the Public Financial Management Act. And tell Addison I'm waiting for his next press conference. The so-called write-off of 32 billion is inconsequential. It has no parliamentary approval, and as a matter of fact, the accounts should be restated as prior year actions next year when the auditors get back there.
I want to take it to Parliament right now, and my colleague Kweku Asante is on the line with me with more on this. Kweku, this is a subject that is dividing opinion in the House, but we're seeing the minority take the lead in putting a bit more pressure on the central bank and the government.
Definitely, Evans. According to the acting ranking member on the committee, if you look at how the central bank went about this duty, it is clearly an offense to the Public Financial Management Act. A side section of the law to say that no state institution can purport to write off public debt without having to come first to Parliament for a resolution to that effect. And in fact, he insists that the Bank of Ghana governor is acting on his own and deciding on some of the things he wants to do without recourse to the laws of the country. He insists that the processes that are available to them in the House, the processes that are available to them outside, including him personally going to court to vindicate these provisions in the Public Financial Management Act, he will do so. He also goes on to talk about some of the expenditures that has been listed in the Bank of Ghana's report that has been subject of public controversy in the last few days. He says that some of those expenditures simply did not meet value for money consideration. And if the Bank of Ghana does not do so now, a future NDC government will be produced matters.
So you write to the Minister for Finance say that the auditors, when I'm preparing my account, you have said that we should write off 32 billion. Please go to Parliament and seek approval for us to write off the 32 billion because they are public funds. You see, Bank of Ghana is not somebody's insurance company. It is not the same as Fidelity Bank or other financial institutions that you can bulldoze your way and write off. These are public funds. They must come to Parliament by a resolution of a simple majority. And the resolution must state the amount involved. It must state how much is written off. So I want to ask Deloitte and Touche, the auditors of Bank of Ghana, whether they saw any resolution from the Parliament of Ghana authorizing the write-off of 32 billion. And on the basis of which they approved the accounts and expressed the opinion that they expressed on the account. When you are auditing an institution, particularly a public institution, you need to be conversant with all its legal obligations and make sure that the accounts and operations are consistent with its mandate. That you saw 80 billion, you have reported that 80 billion was subjected to DDEP. You did not go to the law of Bank of Ghana to find out whether it has the mandate to give 80 billion to the government of Ghana. And yet you say you have expressed an opinion. I have a difficulty with Deloitte and Touche. These are my colleagues, chartered accountants. And they should know that these are legal covenants governing the Bank of Ghana.
And Kweku, this obviously is one of those key issues that the minority is determined to get Parliament to take action on. Have we heard anything from the majority side?
None so far, Evans. Within the precincts of Parliament, we've seen some key majority MPs on the Finance Committee. We tried to talk to them about this. They have not spoken about it. In fact, it has actually landed on the floor itself. Even on the floor of Parliament, no majority MP spoke to it. Isaac Adongo, while supporting a motion to consider the debt restructuring program and to request that the Finance Minister brings it before the House for approval, he raised those significant issues, but there was no response on the majority side. It appears that the majority side do not want to go into those matters yet, and we haven't heard from them yet. It's only the minority who have been harping on this issue for the time being.
Could you stay with me, because there's a lot happening on the floor. We understand that a motion has now been passed to compel the finance minister to submit the details of the domestic debt exchange to the House. I'll come back to you with details on that pretty shortly. But we've been hearing in the last 24 hours from the Bank of Ghana explaining how they incurred so much losses on its books. I want you to listen to the Director of Research at the BOG, Dr. Philip Abredu Otu, clarifying the issues, insisting that it is down largely to the domestic debt exchange program, but also the plans that they are currently pursuing to bring the central bank back to good health, including seeking recapitalization support from the government.
Yes, but if you look at the numbers, you'd clearly recognize that close to 90% of that loss of 60.8 billion was as a result of the domestic debt exchange. It's purely a domestic debt exchange impact that has run through our balance sheet that has created this hole of 60.8 billion. There were three key items, if you'd permit me to explain. So as a result of the domestic debt exchange, we had a 50% principal haircut on our non-marketable instruments, which was around 64.5 billion. So we took a haircut of 50. But remember, no other institution, the private sector and the banks did not take a haircut in all of this. It is the Bank of Ghana that has been the shock absorber to the domestic debt exchange to ensure that we return to debt sustainability over the medium term. As I was explaining, we have the marketable instruments the non-marketable instrument, and COCOBO's loans to BOG were all put in the perimeter of the debt exchange, and that resulted for the loss. These three items alone accounted for 53.1 billion out of the loss of 60.8. This is close to 90% of the loss. And you cannot say that the domestic debt exchange has not had any impact. It's purely a domestic debt exchange impact on our balance sheet. Yes, of course, there were other things, but those other things were very minor on our balance sheet.
I see. So you have a negative equity, and the Bank of Ghana still thinks that we shouldn't be worried?
Yes, we have a negative equity. We think you shouldn't be worried because I think the issue that arises is whether the bank will continue to be policy solvent. It's an issue of policy solvency. And with policy solvency, the issue is whether we can continue to discharge our mandate of pursuing price stability and financial stability despite the negative equity. And the answer is yes, we can. That is not to say that, yes, we don't need to recover. We will have to recover as we move along, but will we be policy solvent as we move on? I think, yes, we will be policy solvent. But again, we also need to recognize that we are putting in place steps and actions to ensure that we return back to positive levels. So some of the measures that we are putting in place is that we'll be retaining profits to build capital back up. We'll then be optimizing the Bank of Ghana's investment portfolio and operating cost mix to bolster efficiency. And then again, I think you said this at the beginning of your program, we will be making an assessment for the potential need for recapitalization support from the government in the medium term.
I will take you back to Parliament pretty shortly, where the Finance Minister is tonight under pressure with Parliament passing a resolution for him to present the details of the debt restructuring program to the House for consideration. Remember that, as you just heard there, the Bank of Ghana just saying and emphasizing that its historic loss of more than 60 billion cedis is down to the restructuring that we saw, the domestic debt restructuring. I want to quickly bring in banking consultant Dr. Richmond Tiahene. Dr. Tiahene, thanks for your time here on Top Story. You just listened to the Director of Research at the BOG, who is emphatic. They are confident this is redeemable. They can turn this around. It's not as bad as everybody else is making it seem. Yes, they have negative equity, but he says it will remain a policy solvent. You share in his optimism.
Thank you very much, Evans. I listened to him, and normally that is how we go about it. We're talking about the implications of what has happened, and it's quite considerable, especially if it's not managed very properly and very well. I heard him saying that they have a policy to retain over the years. If you made a profit of 1.2 billion, all things being equal, if you even retain 50% of the 1.2 billion for the next 10 years, I don't know how you're going to get to this point. So I wouldn't talk much about that retention policy. One thing he said, the last statement, that he will be looking for the government to support. This particular action is already in the World Bank, is in the IMF document 23-168, which said that after the debt restructuring, Bank of Ghana will face a serious capital shortages, deficiency, and they may have to go to the government with technical assistance. I'll use the very word, with technical assistance from the IMF. That is what he said. So for me, going to the government is where I have a little challenge. Already we have physical challenges. I mean, the physical pressures, cutting the budget, doing this and that. Although the government is already in serious trouble as far as fiscal policy is concerned. How are we going to take this on? Are we not going to add the debt again to the states? He made mention of the 50% haircut. That 50% haircut, it is about the overdraft accommodation given to the government, which it was not the actual debt. It was an accommodation given to the government to run the state, 61 billion. So the IMF was saying that it is not part of the bond, so you can't have it structured like the bond. That's why they were hit with 50%. The other bonds, which is remained there, had been treated like the other bonds. So when he said it, I mean, we should make it clear what components were did with 50%. Why was it done? Because we allow physical dominance to run the monetary institution, and that is the consequences that we have. I heard him saying that normally you will tell me that it's a policy solvent, but how do your correspondent bank, the Bank of England and the Fed, what image are you creating before them? Can you go to the governor of Central Bank of England and tell him that we are solvent? Who will believe the statement? Even if they believe it, they will look at you with two eyes. So what he's saying that policy issue, they can do the monetary policy, they can do the lending of last resort, but what is the credibility of it? The credibility of what you're saying, how it is. It is validated by your figures. Don't forget, it is always validated by your figures. And so if you say you're going to do this and that, let us see what will happen. Well, but for me, staying far and doing the figures, we are in a very dire situation. Very dire situation.
Well, if you listen to the Director of Research of the BOG, his fundamental point is, yes, we are a negative equity, but do not worry, because we still remain, as far as a policy solvency is concerned, we are on top of that. We also perform our responsibility. Is when you listen to him, you share in that point that he's making there. You agree with him?
Well, those of us who do the research and be reading about this banking solvency all over the world, central banks, he may be right to a certain extent, but our case is a bit different from what happened in other jurisdictions. I have read a lot since the thing I started. I've read a lot, including about countries, Thailand, Korea. I've read a lot. But yours is a bit different. Ours is something that has hit us because somebody did not do his work. Today, the first deputy governor has given a lecture. I watch it. He's not worried about the physical dominance over money dominance today. So if we are saying things and your big man is also saying another thing, who do we want to believe? If we have done our work, if we have said no, we can't let you go this way, even halfway would have been better. But the way you go on 60-something billion, look, that is the end point of it. And for me, I want to say, let me wait and see. When I said the debt thing about the banking issue, people were saying you are alarmist. Now I have been vindicated. So, Evans, all that I will say, we are in this country. Let us wait and see how his hypothesis can be validated in the next 3 months or 6 months or 1 year. And then we can come back to the table and look at it.
We've had the minority make the point today that the expenditure of the BOG will be subjected to a value for money audit if they win power. We know that the BOG's act that sets it up makes it very autonomous. A lot of what they do is not up for scrutiny. Some have suggested it's time now to review that structure and allow a bit more oversight when it comes to the Bank of Ghana. Is that something that the state parliament should pursue?
Well, it's all about how we allow our laws to operate in this country. The parliament want to see the oversight. When the minister came to present the story about DGEP, did anybody question the cost implication and the financial ramification to the country? You see, if we don't adopt a proactive stance, and we adopt a proactive stance, we always want to do post-mortem. I would have preferred that even when this DBUP was submitted to the Parliament, they would have caused people to do extensive work on it and then question the cost of the project. Unfortunately, we have allowed them to go. Let us come back to operational independence and financial independence. If we can go by the strict financial independence and operational independence, we wouldn't have these things that are happening to us. So even if it's coming under Parliament supervision, and the Parliament, the one party has numbers, and as we know in this country, if one party has numbers, they make useless of what the law is, because they will say yeah, and then it's gone. But if we are very objective and we go straight by the Constitution and the laws, I don't think we have. So coming under banking, I don't have a problem. But the question is that, what about if I have a majority of 170 or 190? Is it not the very same people who are going to say we should do it? And we do it. What will be, when it comes to looking at it, what can you say? The harm has been done. So let us inculcate the application of the law, going strictly by the law that we have set for ourselves, like the Bank of Ghana Act. It says that 10% revenue of the last year. That is it. Fiscal responsibility, 5. Even if you do suspend it, you're not supposed to leave it haywire. No, you put restrictions on it so that it doesn't turn into the economy. So going to the Parliament to supervise the Bank of Ghana, to me, it's neither here nor there, because I have majority. And that is what has been going on in this country. We use the numbers not to question the rationale or the quality of what we are doing. We argue and argue, but the stance, the normal stance, the stance that will come out with figures and quantitative, it is not there. So change it, but I have numbers. We will veto against it.
Dr. Richmond Chahene, thank you very much. That's the banking consultant there, helping us navigate the controversy that is still brewing with the minorities' position on the Bank of Ghana losses that we've been reporting. I want to stay in Parliament now because in the last few moments, the House has adopted a motion that will compel the Finance Minister now to report to the House about the domestic debt exchange program. Kweku Asante is still with me. Kweku, this, from what I understand, is a motion that the minority brought to the House for consideration?
Yes, Evans, this motion was submitted to the Speaker of Parliament so many months ago. You will recall when the Finance Minister was asked to provide those details to the House some few months ago. The minority moved that motion. Dr. Keselato-Forson was on the floor insisting that if Parliament had given the Finance Minister power to contract loans, he cannot, by his own pen, revise the terms of those agreements without not having come into Parliament first to seek approval. And because of this, their side are moving this motion to compel the Minister to bring the full contours of the details of the debt restructuring program, whether it be local or foreign. He must lay them before the House and get the House to approve them. And that was the argument he advanced on the floor. Let's listen to the minority leader as he advanced that argument on the floor a while ago.
The minister responsible for finance must first seek approval from us before he goes and restructure our debt. He doesn't have to go out there and restructure the debt before he informs us. For example, if the country is insolvent or for any reason the country cannot repay its debt, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to present a policy document to us and to inform us that Ghana will have to go through a debt restructuring program and to give us the contours of the debt restructuring program. So, Speaker, the minister decided to organize a press conference at the Ministry of Information and inform the nation without coming to Parliament. So, Speaker, this is a major government policy. If the minister, for any reason, has decided to write off the debt that government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank of Ghana, the Bank of Ghana, it is only right for the minister responsible for finance to bring a document before us and to inform us that they are going to write off a certain debt that the government of Ghana owes to the Central Bank. The minister cannot unilaterally write off debt that is owed to the Central Bank. Speaker, It is for that reason that I request of the Minister of Finance to present to us the contours, the details of government debt restructuring program. Mr. Speaker, I have not asked us to set up an ad hoc committee. All what I'm saying is that the minister must come here and present to us the program of debt restructuring, detailing exactly what he is trying to do. And Mr. Speaker, in your own wisdom, you can refer to the Finance Committee for the Finance Committee to scrutinize it and report to the House.
And Kweku, did he get opposition from the other side, the majority side, or they are in agreement with this proposal?
Well, it wasn't an opposition strictly so-called. The majority chief whip Frank Anodon said that his side is not opposed to the idea of inquiring or having a minister bring these details to Parliament in principle. However, they believe that as a matter of principle, the Finance Committee of Parliament has the powers under the standing orders of the House to be able to go into these matters. They are tired of the minority side continuously seeking to force the House to do business that an ordinary committee of the House could do. So that was the argument that the majority chief whip, Frank Anodon, advanced on the floor a while ago.
Demand from the sponsors of this private member motion to ask of the exchequer of our country to come and apprise the House of the trust of these important national policy, especially in the times we find ourselves as a country and also in global context. So from the outset, I have no problem with that. Safe to say that, Speaker, if you look into our orders, and I was, as my respected leader was moving the motion, I tend to look at Order 155. And Speaker, we have a Committee of Parliament, Finance Committee, with clear powers and mandates. Order 155, Speaker, says, for the purposes, Speaker, with your permit, purposes of effectively performing its functions, each committee shall have all such powers, rights, and privileges as vested in the High Court of Justice or a justice of the High Court at trial in respect, and it goes on and on.
Kweku, so this is passed now by the House.
Yes, it did come to a vote because the House did not agree on how to do this. So the Speaker of Parliament had to put it to a vote, and the minority MPs had more numbers on the floor, and they won the vote. The Speaker consequently directed that the Finance Minister should go to the Finance Committee, present the full details of the debt exchange program, be it local or international, for the Finance Committee to review it and present a report to the House for an approval or rejection.
Okay, and the Parliament is going on recess today.
Hello, Evan.
Yes, I can hear you. Parliament is going
Evan, so that I have here the minority leader. Minority leader briefly on Joy FM. Evan, so you have succeeded in getting this to have the debt restructuring come to the House. You've succeeded in getting that. Some have said, your colleagues, you saw them on the floor saying that the Finance Committee should have the power. And already the Finance Minister did so in the 2023 budget. How do you respond to that? And how soon do you want to get this done?
I think it's something that we need to have it resolved as soon as possible. Because you see, the entire debt restructuring program has massive impact on the general economy of Ghana. And it also has an impact on the integrity and the image of our country. It is something that I have always contended from the onset, that Parliament needed to be apprised with and authority to go on to this major expedition of engaging in debt restructuring must be approved by Parliament. For some interesting reason, the Finance Minister started the journey without parliamentary approval. Now, we have heard that they have unilaterally restructured Bank of Ghana's debt to the point that Central will need recapitalization. Quote, the Bank of Ghana is now bankrupt, insolvent. What we need to do is for us to understand the basis why this restructuring happened. And so I have said that there was the need for the minister responsible for finance to appear before us and to give us the document of the debt restructuring, giving us the details, including the contours of the entire debt restructuring program.
You just mentioned the Bank of Ghana, and it's become one of the issues that you referenced in that your statement on the floor. What are you going to do about this if you insist that the Bank of Ghana does not have the power to unilaterally write off these debts?
Yes, the Bank of Ghana does not have that power. Neither does the government have the power to do this without parliamentary approval. Because Bank of Ghana is a bank that is owned by the people of Ghana. It's a sovereign bank. The shareholders are the people of Ghana. It is only the representative of Parliament of the people of Ghana that should have the authority to write off those debts. We have in the what you call the PFM Act. Clearly, we are asking the minister to come to bring it to us to seek approval from Parliament before he can do such a thing. I mean, some of them he's done it already, but he will need ratification. But I do not believe that this exercise should continue without parliamentary approval. And I'm happy that Parliament today agreed with me and asked the minister responsible for finance to present to Parliament the entire debt restructuring program, which includes the domestic debt exchange, the common framework, the agreement on the Eurobond and the Bank of Ghana debt. Everything we need to see that too.
Thank you. Evans, the minority leader just rushing into meetings with the majority leadership ahead of Parliament, taking its adjournment ahead of some of the key business that have hit a deadlock on the floor. We have a number of tax waivers that have not been dealt with. The majority have, for the lack of a better word, ganged up against one of their own, Kuku Kwarteng, asking him to present those reports for discussion. I've seen that those ones have all been listed on the other paper. I've seen the trade minister, his deputies, all of them in Parliament, lobbying the leadership on both sides, especially the minority, to clear the path to approve these tax waivers before the House goes on break and return in October. I've just seen that House are just taking a 30-minute break so that some of these details can be negotiated by leadership on both sides. As Evans, we are keeping our eyes on the floor for some of these key businesses to come before the House takes its break.
And that is happening today. We're keeping a close eye in Parliament indeed, and Kweku will stay with us and bring us the very latest as and when we hear it on the day Parliament takes a long break. Still ahead here on Newsnight, Works and Housing Minister